Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Matters of the Heart and Soul podcast. My name is Janie, and welcome to a new episode. Today, we are talking about healing past sexual trauma, and I have Miss Jaitara Jayde with me today. And she is a women's empowerment expert. She's had her own journey of healing, and we're going to hear all about it. But it's so important that we talk about this. We talk about sexual trauma head on because it is such an important topic and it's important for now for both men and women. Blockages in this area could really block so much of our lives, prosperity, love, everything. So we want to shed some light on a dark area, or at least an area that has been programmed to be dark, right? So welcome to the podcast. Jaitara.
Thank you for having me, Janie. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, so introduce yourself. Tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and what are you currently doing?
Okay, well, my specialty is at the very foundation and core of my work is the healing of the sexual wound imprint, as I call it. So a lot of the people that come to me, mostly women, but more and more men are coming for this healing as well, which is also important to mention because we hear about it so much with women. But, there are men out there with this wound as well. So that's the foundation of my work is to just clear this wound because it does impact how we show up, what we create. Um, Sexual energy is at the very root of our creative life force because it's what creates our existence as human beings. So if there's contraction there, unresolved healing, there's always going to be a part of you holding back to protect this vulnerable aspect of yourself. And when you're holding back, period. And when it's happening at the root, it filters into every aspect of your life. So that's my biggest passion is to just help people free themselves of this wound. And I do this work through private one-on-one, who I have an online program I'm about to release soon called Sacred Pleasure and Prosperity, as well as a retreat. And I got into this work because first I had to heal myself. And I didn't even know that I had this wound to heal until 27 years after the abuse and the exploitation happened. And then my journey was it was healing as well as a spiritual awakening journey.
Yeah.
And once I went through it, I was really passionate about helping others. Up until that point, I was working as an actor and an artist and doing a bit of writing. So I didn't plan this path professionally, but it's definitely my passion now.
Yeah. So tell us about your story, working as an actor and an artist, and then realizing that, wow, this is a blockage for me. Like, what was your story?
Well, the turning point for me was a very specific event. I was living in Toronto, Ontario at the time, and I was standing on a subway platform. It was 1999 in November. And across the platform from me was a billboard that said teenage prostitution is child abuse. And I went into shock because I had been that child. I was 16 when that happened to me. And it hadn't even occurred to me until that moment that I had been a victim. There was that inner voice that there was a secret I kept inside, a lot of self-blame, self-shame, self-judgment, which is very common when there's a sexual wound. I don't even remember the journey home. I just remember next standing in my bathroom, looking out my bathroom window and I was 42 at the time. So 27 years of suppressed anger, rage, grief just erupted all at once. And it was so intense, I literally thought I'd explode. And I cried out, God, please help me.
Mm.
The moment I spoke those words, a bird landed on my back patio railing, and spirit speaks to me through animals because they know I'm going to look it up. And I instantly became peaceful. I knew that was a response. I'd never seen a bird like it. So I ran and got my animal totem book, Animal Speak by Ted Andrews, and I looked it up, and it was a grackle. The teaching of a grackle is to release emotional congestion from the past before it manifests into physical illness. You can move forward into the future. And that was the beginning of my healing journey. And for 2 days, I stayed home and I just purged. I gave myself permission to yell, scream, cry. Now, if I'd known about the healing modalities I do now, it could have happened much faster, but that was my journey at the time. And at the end of those 2 days, it's like a veil lifted. I found suddenly that the lack of self-worth started to dissipate. I literally got on the phone and called all my friends and said, guess what happened to me as a teenager? I finally felt free to talk about it.
Wow.
And so it was still a few more years of my own healing journey. But as that unfolded, I just knew I had to help other people with this because I could feel on a collective level that this wound is so big and so vast.
So prior to you having that moment on the subway, what was your life like? What did you feel blockages? Were you in bad relationships or
Oh, yes. Very
okay,
bad relationships. I
okay.
attracted, yeah. I was married for a few years. He wasn't a bad person, but he had a drinking issue and very not much emotional intelligence there. And after that, it just got increasingly worse. And before that, there were a lot of alcoholic, verbally abusive men. And
Mhm,
I'm not a drinker, but I would attract that into my life. And when
mhm,
I meet somebody who really had themselves together, seemed like a really great guy, I would push them away. There was that inner voice I never said out loud, oh my gosh, if they know I'm really a whore, they won't want to be my friend.
mm. So was
Mhm.
that your inner voice since teenage?
About that, yeah. Yeah, I carried that self-judgment and the lack of self-worth. And you wouldn't know on the surface, I appeared way more confident on the surface than what I appeared within,
Right.
it was beneath the layers.
Mhm. Now, as a teenager, how were you exploited? What was that situation?
I was 16 years old. I used to go to the shopping mall, as a lot of us did as teens after school. I had my school books under my arm, and a man came up to me. He wasn't, at 16, I think he was in his early 20s. At that age, it's a big age difference.
Mhm,
And, my father was not abusive. He was a good man, but he was emotionally absent. He just never said, I love you. He just didn't know how to be present as a father. So I was very naive and needy, wanting to hear a man say, I love you and to guide me. And that's what this man did. He groomed me for about 4 months. And then after 4 months, he turned into my pimp.
mm.
And by then, I did anything that he said. So he controlled me through love. So it was sort of a coercion, almost like a brainwashing type of thing, a 4-month grooming process, which is very common in this situation. And I don't even remember how I got away from him. But after I left him, there was a woman who became my pimp, and she controlled me through fear. She threatened to beat me up if I didn't do what she said.
Wow, how long did this go on?
Between the ages of 16 and 17.
Okay. How did you get out of it?
Well, finally, she did beat me up, which woke me up. And then I went home to my mother and stepfather, didn't tell them what happened. I just said, I want to get out of their house and I'm afraid that she'll beat me up again.
Right.
And so my stepfather was a big man. So he came to the door. He said, I've come to help her get her things. And
Yeah.
that's, yeah. And I didn't tell my mother what happened till after that turning point when I was in my 40s. She just thought I was a promiscuous teen. She had no idea what was going on.
Yeah. So Jaitara, with all of that, and then starting your healing journey when it hit you that day, what are some things that you teach now to the parents of teenagers?
That's a good question. Uh, Most of my work really is working with adults who have had some kind of sexual wounding in the past and helping them clear that. So really, I guess what I'm teaching is by example, guiding them, because in addition to clearing the emotional wounding around it, I also guide them to merge their spirituality, whatever that is to them, with their sexuality.
Yeah.
So I haven't been, I mean, I do have a book in my mind I want to write that's specifically for teens. So I haven't been guiding parents on how to guide their teenagers yet, but I have worked with a lot of parents who have carrying that wound themselves.
Yeah. So with the people that you're working with, how, especially for our listeners, people
Mhm.
that may not even be awakened to, wow, something happened to me and I don't know, I can't remember. Or because sometimes we know the spirit or the soul will block it out too.
Yeah, yeah.
What are some things that could be happening in their lives for them to start thinking, I think I have a sexual trauma block?
Yeah. Usually shows up in relationships as a holding back of some kind or a contraction when they're with their partner and not feeling they can fully open up, not feeling that they have power of their voice to
Mhm.
verbalize, ask for what they want. And that's very common with women, especially even if there's not a sexual wound, to not know how to speak your voice in the bedroom to guide your partner. And usually it's done because we as women are naturally very nurturing and we're afraid we're going to hurt their feelings because we don't want them to think they're not getting it right, even if they're not getting it right. Meanwhile, the masculine, usually their pleasures and giving the pleasure, they want to be the hero and they would like us to speak their voice. But often, if there's a real holding back and contraction in that, just not feeling safe to completely open up and surrender and let go and connect with your partner in that way.
Yeah.
Often.
And safety and security is so important
Mm.
for that release, for that love, for all of that to just open wide up, especially for women. So, and you really hit it just a second ago. I think that women want to be nurturing, but sometimes they don't want to, I guess, disappoint the masculine. What do you think about that? Like, or is that something we have just been programmed to not talk about? Uh,
Again, I was in my 40s till after this happened before I was able to speak my voice. I would just take their lead all the time. And then as I did my own healing journey, I realized how much they really enjoyed the communication because you're partners, you're
mhm, mhm,
partners. So
mhm.
that conversation is so important. It's so beautiful when you're on the same page, when you're communicating, and it becomes a divine union between the two of you.
Yeah. So
And
let's
then
go ahead.
I was going to say the masculine wants to be your hero. If he's a healthy masculine man, and this is true in same sex too. There's still that dance of the masculine and feminine. They want to be your hero. That's what they're wanting. So they want that communication.
Definitely. What are some of the biggest emotional blocks that you help people clear in sexual trauma? Because I know the shame and the guilt is there. Is there
Hmm.
anything else? Like you said, you had that internal dialogue, right?
Yeah.
Like, do they know I'm a whore? Like, what are some of the things that come up often with the people you work with?
Just feelings of lack of self-worth. The majority of the people that come to me are aware of the sexual abuse that happened. There's also some that don't have a memory. This is very common. Don't have a memory of a specific incident, but they sense something is there.
Mm,
So usually it's connected to a lack of self-worth, not feeling in their full power to speak their voice. And this isn't just in relationships, but this can show up professionally as well. Um, yeah, they sense there's a holding back, whether it's a speaking of their voice, whether it's in their expression, whether it's even what they're creating in the world. Sometimes it can show up as money issues.
mhm.
Because energy is the root of our creative force. Again, if there's that holding back, there's a holding back. And so there's a holding back in whatever we're creating in our life. And what we're creating in our life is what creates the prosperity. So it filters into every area.
It does. Now, you talk a lot about the four sacred laws of sexual enlightenment. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, that is my book that I wrote that I came out with. I believe it was 2017 or 2018. And it's like those four sacred laws channeled through me. I remember when it first started coming through, I thought to myself, who am I to release a book with a title like that? But the information kept coming. So yeah, through my experience and through my work, I've just discovered that these four sacred laws, and when I say laws, it's not obligatory, but
Mhm.
sort of like law of gravity. I found that when people follow them, you will be on your own path of enlightenment with regard to your sexuality. So the first sacred law is the gift, acknowledging that our sexual energy is the gift of life. It creates our human existence. And whatever your spiritual belief is, most do agree that before we came into these physical bodies, we're pure divine love intelligence. It was sexual energy that made it possible to be pure divine love intelligence inhabiting physical human form. So when you think about sexual energy is actually the power cord that connects the two realms.
Mm.
So it's intended, it's our divine design by creation that our light body and our sexual body be merged as one. So through time, through history, um, and unhealthy imprints, our sexuality and spirituality have been split into two separate boxes. And that's not the nature of who we are. Sexuality is not intended to be strictly a physical experience. We're not just meat and bones. We're spiritual beings inside a physical body. And this is this beautiful, powerful energy that creates life. So if you're not activating it to create a new human life, then activate it to breathe new life through you. And when
Yeah.
it's grounded and anchored in love, with or without a partner, then it's a gift. It shows up as a beautiful gift.
Yes, and that's such a beautiful way of putting it because it is our creative power and it's so powerful. And is there any tools or any recommendations that you could share on how to merge spirituality and sexuality as that gift?
Yes, I mean, it varies depending on if you're on your own or if you're with a partner. If
True.
we'll start with a partner,
Yeah.
if you're with a partner, and this is true whether it's your beloved or it's common to have a short-term encounter with someone. If you're taking that path, that's fine too. There's no judgment, but make sure that both of you are honoring the divine in one another.
Yes.
Don't just throw it away. You're there anyway, so show up fully. This is powerful energy. You're merging with another human. Be very, very discerning who you're merging your energy with. So look into the eyes of the other, see that light of the divine in them, and take time to just acknowledge that, that, to feel your hearts connect, and to be in that presence first and,
Yeah.
and, and ground it from that space first. If you're solo, take time to hold your hands over your heart. Feel all that love you have inside your heart and hold one hand on your heart. And then you're touching, just hold your hand on other parts of your body and just pour that love into your body and feel that connection. Remember that first and foremost, you are divinity expressing in human form, and ground and anchor it from there. And then connect with yourself from that space first. Let that be the anchor.
And that's so beautiful and it's so lovely and it feels so good. And once you experience that, you'll never ever not see the divinity in your partner. You'll never not want to because you're cheating yourself if you're not doing it that way.
And we're also primal beings. That's fine too. But when you anchor it in that, then
Yeah,
the primal expression is fun and playful and it feels
exactly. So the gift, we got that. And
yes,
what's number two?
healing and forgiveness. So do whatever the healing work is. Do the healing, forgiveness. I know it's a big one to forgive past abusers. Forgiveness of self, of course, is very important. Forgiveness of religion. Forgiveness sometimes is just through extra strict upbringing and shaming by parents because they didn't know. Excuse me. One of the processes I do when I'm guiding people to heal from the past is to guide them to a place where they can actually feel compassion for the abuser, even if it's just a tiny crack. Recognizing that deep, deep down, because they were born an innocent little baby, just like the rest of us, something happened along the way that there was a wound imprint. Deep down, there's a very wounded little boy or girl inside. And unfortunately, instead of choosing the healing path, they chose to repeat the pattern. So if you can feel compassion for that wounded little boy or girl that's buried deep down inside, then that's a gift to yourself. So
Yeah,
this is a gift that you give to yourself. And the good news is the past doesn't exist anymore. It's not real.
that's so true.
What's real is the energy of it. If you're still impacted, the energy of the past is still connected and attached to you. And that's what we can do. That's what I help people with is free yourself. Can't erase the memory, but we can completely free you from the pain of the past, from the trigger. We can transcend that pain into wisdom.
Yeah. Would you say this second step, the healing and forgiveness, is one of the hardest or longest, depending on how, I guess, how diligent someone is about getting through it?
It depends on the individual. I've been doing this work for so long that if it's an isolated incident, I can literally help you clear it in one session.
That's
If
beautiful.
it's when, for example, one client I worked with, she grew up in India. And when she was a small child, her parents had servants and she was neglected. So she was abused by the parents. And then she was put into an arranged marriage where they didn't research properly. He was very abusive. She had a divorce, which was shameful in India, then another arranged marriage where he was abusive. So that took more than one session. It was a lifetime of,
Yeah.
that we had to go through. But if it's an isolated incident, if it happened at a specific age with a specific person, then usually we can clear that in just one session.
Yeah. And do you do energy work? Do you do meditations? Do you do affirmations? What are just a little bit of the things that you do to help people clear these traumas?
My key modality is a modality called the compassion key. So it's done over Zoom. Breath work used to be my key modality, which is powerful. And I still
Very, yeah.
facilitate breath work at retreats and workshops. Um, but it was limiting because you had to come and, excuse me, had to come and see me in person. And then I found this beautiful modality 2 years ago called the compassion key, where it's so powerful, so effective, so easy, and it can be done. It's actually best done on Zoom. So now I'm helping people all over the world. And it's based in pure love and compassion. And it's a verbally guided process where we're pouring love, compassion, and acknowledgement on the wounded part that love, compassion, and acknowledgement they didn't receive when it happened. So I have a way of finding out the key emotions that are coming up for the client. And then I'm able to trace it back to the very, very, very root source of where it all began, because that's where the imprint first happened. For
Mhm.
example, if you have a betrayal wound, it just keeps showing up throughout your life like a knee-jerk reaction. It's a ripple effect, different stories, different people, but you keep having that experience of betrayal.
Yeah.
So
We
when you
got to go to the imprint.
trace it back to where the imprint originated, and then there's a process where I literally have them bring, so say if it's their 5-year-old, they bring that out and they sit opposite, and there's actually a communication that happens where they're pouring that acknowledgement, love, and compassion on that wounded child. And we stay with them until that child feels happy and playful. And then it's been cleared. It's magical, it's powerful, and it's hard to explain unless you actually experience it, but
Yeah.
it works.
Yeah. A lot of healing is about experiencing it, experiencing the energy run through you, all of that. And would you say imprints could be something that have happened lifetimes ago and it's kind of following you until you kind of heal it, or you keep coming back to heal it?
Well, in this work, we focus on this lifetime, but it does show up in some sessions where we do end up in past lifetimes. Yes. And pretty much always when that happens, it was at a moment of death. It was a very traumatic death.
Yeah.
I've had some clients where we've gone back to a witch burning, or there was some kind of torture, something happening that was so traumatic, such a traumatic death that it left an imprint on the soul.
Wow. So we
So
got the gift, we got healing and forgiveness. And then what's the third sacred law of sexual enlightenment?
the third one's very practical, and that's responsibility. And there's many, 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 many layers to that. Taking responsibility for your own healing, responsibility of conscious communication. And the one I'm most passionate about that is how we communicate with our youth. Especially in North America, the sex education is so limited. It's just a biology lesson. And for the female anatomy, it's actually not even complete with most sex ed. There's
That
a
the
body.
music that's out here, the music that teens are listening to, the television, like everything out in the environment is very much is sexual. It's hypersexual. So, and I love the fact that you mentioned responsibility, because it is our responsibility. How do you get people to move from, I guess, victim
Mhm.
to being responsible for my healing? Like, and I know that's a process, and I never want anyone that's been sexually abused to feel like it's their fault,
Oh, never,
but
never.
healing is a part of our responsibility. So
Yes.
how do you help people move into that energy?
Well, when the incident happened, you were a victim. After that, you become a survivor.
Mm-hmm.
So Yeah, the sessions that I do, the clearing work that I do, we go back and we just clear everything you're feeling around that, any contraction, any pain, any wounding. And, then I make people cry a lot. Sessions, there's lots of tears
Well, and
because
that's clearing. A lot of clearing is through crying.
yeah. And unfortunately, with this particular wound, self-blame and self-judgment is so common. And the reason that is because our the nerve endings that create physical pleasure in the body still work.
Mhm.
And rarely, especially childhood abuse, rarely is it violent in the sense of being forced down, beaten, held. It's
Mhm.
coerced, it's
Mhm.
manipulation.
Mhm.
It's this is our special secret. This is because
Mhm.
I love you.
Mhm.
Don't tell anybody. That feels good, doesn't it? So they'll intentionally make it feel good in order that's part of the coercion. So, I mean, Oprah, she was the first one to speak publicly about this. She talked about that,
Yep.
she was sexually assaulted by her uncle and he made it feel good. And then she carried this self-blame. And that was actually opened the door for me. It was shortly after that that I had my big breakdown that turned into a breakthrough. It opened a window for me. So it's very, very common to have that self-blame because often there was some kind of physical pleasure. That's part of the manipulation tactic. That's part of the coercion. So
Mhm.
that's also help them do too is, forgive themselves, relieve themselves, because it's never, ever, ever the victim survivor's fault.
Yeah.
They
Now,
were on,
yeah.
period.
Um, with you saying that, what about or what light can you shed on people who may still have to see the person that violated them? They're
Mm.
still in the family. There's still the Christmas dinners and the Thanksgiving gatherings. And because that has to be tough when you're in a healing and forgiving journey, right? So, what is your recommendation on that?
Okay, that's a really good question. I mean, it actually doesn't come up as much as you would think, because usually it's someone they don't see anymore. But
Mhm.
in that situation, first take care of your own healing first. First, get yourself to a point where you're clear. Um, I personally would recommend, if not speaking with them directly, maybe writing a letter. And then it's up to you to choose if you actually want to give that letter to them or get the words out that you want to communicate to that person. There is a process in the healing that we do where we actually put the abuser in a circle separate. So, we're working with an infinity symbol when you're communicating with your younger self. And then we put the abuser in a separate circle. And you can't clear them, but you can clear yourself and heal yourself on what comes up for you as you observe them there. So that's something we do in a session where there's always a healing on yourself on what you're triggered by having the abuser. So sometimes that's enough for the person. So it's really an individual journey.
Yeah.
Do you
I'm
want to speak to them directly? Do you want to write a letter? Do you want to give them that letter? Or do you just want to write it and burn it? So that would really depend on the individual in the situation. I don't
Mhm.
think there's a straight answer for that.
And what I've picked up, even with everything that's going on in the news right now, we're seeing a lot of things being revealed as it relates to sexual abuse, especially in Hollywood and that type of thing. So I'm seeing that a lot of sexual abuse is about power, it's about manipulation, it's about forcing your will on someone else's.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, like, do you see that often? Like, do you deal with that? Like people feeling shame because they release their power to someone else?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shame is a
Yeah.
huge one that comes up, whether they were a child or whether they were adult at the time that it happened.
Yeah.
Again, it's just so common for that self-blame to happen. So that's another thing I guide people is to finally free themselves of that shame and that self-blame. Because
Yeah.
never, it's never the victim survivor's fault.
Right.
They're a predator and you were their prey, period.
Absolutely. And before we move on to the fourth, still under responsibility,
Yes.
What are some things that you're passionate about as far as teaching teenagers? You said it's not enough education in the schools. So what are you offering? Is there anything that you're currently doing to get that type of education out to teenagers?
I do have a book inside me, and I know teenagers prefer videos and books. So I'm like, well, if I'm going to come up with this book, there has to be a video series. It hasn't been done yet, but it is
Okay.
in there. And when I do this, I actually want to collaborate with other experts in the field. So I've actually
Yeah.
got a teacher of sex ed contributing. So we'll have a video series and somewhere they can go online. In France and the Netherlands, their sex ed is very advanced. It's I don't know if they incorporate the spiritual aspect, and that's such a personal thing. Everybody's
Yeah.
very unique, but at least, they have a three-dimensional, the full boomerang shape image of a clitoris that they teach to their young students. So they
Yeah.
teach the full anatomy of the masculine and feminine in full detail. It's done very practically, matter of fact. So France and Netherlands are very advanced when it comes to sex ed. Not
Yeah.
so
And
much.
we have to include that sacredness of this energy
Mhm.
and help teenagers, young adults understand that when you decide, because it's a decision, no one should ever take that from you. When you decide to intermingle your energy with another person, that you're literally taking on all of their energy, all of their wounds, all of their trauma, everything. You're intertwining that. And it's so important to understand what that means on an energetic, spiritual level.
Yeah, the respect, the number 3, the respect or sorry, responsibility is probably the biggest one when it comes to teens because it's
Yeah,
respect, responsibility of communication, um,
yes.
just the responsibility of respecting one another,
Mm,
the responsibility of consent, when it comes to adult responsibility of lifestyle choices. I've seen people where, you know, their partner wants to be polyamorous and they're not, and one tries to force the other. If, make sure your lifestyles are a match. If you're monogamous, choose a monogamous person.
yeah.
Be polyamorous, choose someone who's interested in that, but don't try to get the other person to do it your way. So there's so many layers to the responsibility piece.
Now that you're saying all that for sure. All right, so we got the gift, healing and forgiveness, responsibility. And then what's the fourth sacred law of sexual
Fourth
enlightenment?
one is like the icing on the cake. I call it the invitation. So it's inviting the lover essence of God source into the sexual experience, whatever that means to you. And when
Yeah.
I first started speaking into this years ago, I got resistance because people hear the word God, they think mother, father, God. They think of father or mother or both,
Mhm.
which is true, but we don't invite our parents into the bedroom. That's not a vibrational match.
Right.
The essence of God's source energy comes in all relationships, the sister, the friend, the brother, and the lover. So if
Mhm.
you're going to imagine what the lover essence of God's source is to you, so, that would be like the healthy divine masculine, the healthy divine feminine. What
Mhm.
would that mean to you? How would they speak to you from that place of pure honoring, cherishing, and reverence?
Mhm.
Going to touch you, how would they touch you from that space of honoring you as source energy love in human form?
Yeah.
How would they be present with you from that space? Imagine what it's like to have that. See that in your partner. See that divinity, that spark of divinity. When you look into the eyes of the one you love, that love is their divinity. So bringing that in first, as I spoke to, back when we were talking about the gift, if you're solo, just imagine, feel that love, that divinity that is you, and bring that into the experience first. Um, One of the things I like to do, and it can show up in other things other than sexuality. When we're meditating, I love to dance. And
Mm,
sometimes when I'm dancing, I'll invite that frequency of source energy love into the dance. Come feel this dance with me. Feel the beauty of moving my body to this beautiful music. We're
yeah.
in these experiencing this physical reality. So I like playing with that. Or I smell a beautiful rose. Smell this scent with me. Feel this
Yeah.
beautiful this is. I mean, we're designed for pleasure. not just sexual pleasure, the pleasure of moving our body, the beautiful scent of a rose, the warm sand between our toes. The pleasures everywhere in this beautiful planet that we live on.
Yeah,
So,
and I think we should be in the presence moment by moment. So even if you're in the sacred energy exchange, why not invite the divine intelligence into that? I mean, it's powerful, it's amazing, it's wonderful. It's
yes.
beautiful. So, and I experienced that. So I
Yeah.
totally get it.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, before I ask you about your books, I
Yes.
want to ask you, do you ever come across couples or marriages and
Mm.
there's this blockage? One of the partners are blocked, and maybe there's no sexual trauma, but the sexual energy is blocked.
Yes.
And I find that has a lot to do with safety and security, whether it's her emotions that's not saved or finances that are not saved. There's some issue with safety and security. Do you ever come across that?
Yes. Yes, and when I work with couples, there's mediation that I do. There's a very conscious communication that happens. Often, too, what I'll do is I'll work with them each individually with a healing session, taking them through a clearing and a healing, then bring them together to communicate. And as those of us who are primarily a feminine essence, I'm primarily feminine, we're always thinking about our safety.
Mm,
The most simplest definition of divine masculine is witnessing without judgment, providing safety, and holding that space.
mhm.
So, and the most simplest definition of divine feminine is love, compassion, nurturing. So, as the feminine, we're always looking for that safety. The masculine is just there. And we tend to be in two different speeds when it comes to sexual intimacy because the masculine is very goal oriented. They're very single focused, very goal oriented. Whereas we want to be savored, cherished slowly. So often with couples, what's involved, even though the masculine may think he's taking his time, usually it's guiding him how to the true meaning of really slowing down.
Mhm.
Because for the feminine, for us, it's not about the goal, or we could just be fine all by ourselves. We're with a partner because of that depth, that connection, wanting to
Yeah.
feel cherished and savored. So that's sort of the work I do with couples to bring them in on that same page.
Yeah. And do they come because one person is not interested sexually, or there's this miscommunication? Is something going on that's off?
Well, sometimes it's because one's not interested. Often it's the feminine who comes to me because they don't know how to communicate with their partner and have them be more present,
Mm.
really slow down and go at the pace that they want to. So it's, just because they're a little bit out of sync. So just plugging, I know some are listening to this audio. I'm just moving my hands here, but trying to get them in sync. So
Yeah.
they're both fully present with one another, going at the same pace, being in the same frequency, in the same presence with one another.
Yeah. You also talk about how once you clear this energy, your sexual sacred energy, how your abundance and prosperity open up. Can you explain the rationale behind that?
Well, a lot of the female clients that I work with, a lot of the women I work with are coaches, healers, people that are in a similar occupation as me. So that involves being in the power of your voice. So if there's a holding back, there's a holding back of your voice, or often it can be, for example, yesterday I just worked with a client and she's brilliant at what she does professionally, but she admitted that there was this fear of being fully seen, that it wasn't safe. So she knew she was playing small and
Mm.
holding back because it wasn't safe in the past to be fully seen because then she was assaulted, or she would gain weight because then she wouldn't be as pretty. So, yeah, I've actually forgotten the question you asked me, but yes, so the healing, so it does impact professionally because once you clear that and you feel fully safe and you've cleared all that, then you can just open up and fully express, be in the full power of your voice. You're not afraid to step out and play big anymore and be fully seen and
Yeah.
present who you are in the world. And when that happens, then it comes. I know for me, um, one of the things I did as well for years, I knew that my special gift was in the healing of this sexual wound. And for a long time, I hired different business coaches that didn't quite know what to do with that. Tried to steer me into, well, if you help people make money with their work, then that's how you make money as a coach. And I'm like, but I'm not a business coach. So it wasn't until I finally stood in my power. I'm like, no, this is my gift. This is what I do, and
Yeah.
own. And then the clients just started coming. So just
Yeah.
be true to you. What's in your heart? What do you know you have to offer the world, and just clear whatever's in the way of fully standing in the power of that.
Yeah. And I believe it affects the rest of our divinity because that energy moves up, right? And so if there's a blockage at the
Mhm.
very beginning of safety and security, it's going to be hard for our heart to open. It's going to be hard for our throat chakra to open. I mean, because energy moves up. So it's going to be extremely hard if we don't clear that blockage there.
Exactly. That's what's at the root, is that feeling of safety. If you don't feel safe, it's because there's something that needs to be healed or cleared. And that's natural. You're going to hold back to protect yourself because you don't feel fully safe. So once you do that, once you clear that, now you feel safe to fully put
Yeah. So,
yourself.
Jaitara, tell our listeners a little bit about your books that you currently have so that they could start the journey. I tell people at least read a book, start there.
Yeah.
There's so much healing in books, and we have so much power to heal ourselves as well. We have coaches along the way that could help us, but there's tons of information. So tell us about your books that you currently have available to help people with sexual trauma.
Yes. Well, there's the one we spoke about, which is the Four Sacred Laws of Sexual Enlightenment. You can get that on Amazon. And then there's a new one that I came out with in 2023, and it actually comes with a quiz, and it's called Your Sacred Pleasure and Prosperity Archetypes. And you can get that at sacredpleasureandprosperity.com. And it's really fascinating. There's 8 sacred pleasure and prosperity archetypes. The quiz will tell you exactly what your primary is, what your supporting are. We have all 8, but just like in astrology, your sun sign is the primary and the others support it. It's the same with these archetypes. And that's really fun and playful. And yeah, so that explains that we have specific personalities and qualities around how we deal with money,
Yeah.
as well as care and intimacy. And this quiz and book helps you with that. So that one's more on the fun and playful side, but it's fascinating and incredibly accurate.
Yeah. And I know you talked about dancing, and I think dancing is a beautiful way to allow energy to flow and just to get in tune with your energy and all that good stuff. Is there
Yes.
another 2 or 3 things that people could start doing just in their everyday life to allow this sexual energy or this expression or this embodiment of their creative energy and be expressive with it? Because dancing is beautiful. Dancing is one of those amazing ways to express energy.
It is. I believe it's one of the key fountains of youth. Keep dancing.
Yes, keep dancing.
So one of the things I love to do and that I feel are really important is to have some kind of a morning practice. And if you're short on time, you only need a couple minutes. But when you wake up in the morning, before you run to the phone, before you run to technology and get on with your day, just take a moment to just breathe. And if you have a place you can sit outside to listen to nature, even better. Just place your hand on your heart, hand on your solar plexus, and just breathe. And then the invitation, invite, the divine source energy, whatever that means to you, invite them into your presence. I often like to say, good morning, my beautiful divine team. So lovely to co-create with you for another day.
Indeed.
And
Indeed.
then I'll just breathe and just be present, and then tune into all 5 senses. What does your body feel like today? What do you smell? What do you taste? What do you see? What sounds? And listen, I'm so blessed to have a park outside my back door. I love listening to the birds, especially this time of year in springtime. I'll just listen to all the sounds of nature and just be in that full, complete presence, connecting with your breath, and then start your day from that place instead of jumping up, do, 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 do. And
Yeah.
do that 5 minutes, even 2 minutes of that
Yeah.
completely. So that to me is so important.
That is good because you're getting into the presence, which becomes your point of attraction for your entire day as well.
And when after you connect like that, then express gratitude. And it
Yeah.
can be simple. Like, I'm so grateful for the sounds of the birds. I'm
Yeah.
so grateful for the sunshine. I'm so grateful for the flowers on the trees, whatever it is. And then you can express, if there's something you want to create in your life. For example, I'm hosting a retreat in Sicily in September. So I'm so grateful for all the women who are feeling called to come and join me in Sicily. So what are you creating? What are you wanting to create in your work, in your life? Maybe you're looking for a new home. I'm so grateful for my beautiful new home that's
Yeah.
come appear to me. Whatever it is you're wanting to draw in your life.
Yeah. And
Some
what
gratitude with the little things that are there. And then
gratitude is paramount, I think, in creating the life we want. Because if we're grateful for the things we have, we're more abundant to attract and be more grateful for more things.
yes,
And what I hear you say, I think, if I was to sum it up a little bit, as far as going through the healing, the four sacred laws, is almost that we look at the trauma, right? We see it, we transmute it, but then we feel it with
yeah,
love and compassion. Because if we don't fill that space with something, then it'll fill with something else. If we don't fill it with love and compassion and forgiveness, then that space could fill with something negative or whatever.
absolutely. And I love that you said that, because one of the processes I do when we're sort of dealing with the past abuser is I ask them if they see any hooks or cords, energetic energy coming from that person still hooked into them. And
Mhm.
often they do. So I guide them to release that, declare that. And I said, with every hook you're removing, see that immediately replaced with beautiful, loving source energy light.
Yeah.
Fill space that the hook once occupied with that. So I'm
Yeah.
so glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. So, Jaitara, how can our listeners reach you, sign up for any of your sessions, any of your classes? What's the best way for everyone to get in touch with you?
Through my website, feminineartistry.com. I'm actually considering going back to jaitara.com. So if you just go to my first name, jaitara.com, it will guide you to either one.
Awesome. And at the time of the recording of this podcast, what would you say is the greatest matter of your heart right now?
Greatest matter of my heart. Well, my big vision is to just send a big wave and ripple of healing throughout this planet so that this I have one of those unusual jobs where my ultimate goal rather, is to be out of work, for people to not need me anymore.
Yeah, for healing to just be so abundant
That's
on
my
the
ultimate
planet.
goal. Yeah,
Exactly. I hear you.
yeah, that's my
I hear
ultimate
you.
goal. I don't know if it can happen this lifetime, but that's my ultimate goal, is to be out of work.
Yeah.
Nothing
And
else
it's
to do.
and it's I want people to know that when you send healing to others, or even if you envision the
Mhm.
picture of this planet in your mind's eye, you get that healing back as well. Because what we
Yeah,
put out, we get back. So when we're sending healing and love to others, our family, our friends, the planet, the countries, we're getting that back in return.
and I want to mention to your listeners too, if they just want to test this modality, I do group clearings, and for that, it's a contribution. You can contribute anywhere from $1 to 97. Like, you can show up for just $1, and that's at clearthesexualwound.com. I offer those every 2 or 3 months as a group event, and it's good. Nobody goes on screen on Zoom. Your privacy is maintained. And those are very, very powerful as well. So for some people, they find the group clearing complete. Um,
Yeah.
a great opportunity to experience this particular modality that I use and how I work.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you for taking the time to share this very powerful and important information. Is there anything you want to leave? Any last remarks? Anything else we should know?
Hmm. Just to remember that you remember who you are.
Yeah.
You are a divinity here in this temporary human body having a human experience. but that's the purest truth of who you are. You were divinity expressed as you.
That's it. That's
And
it.
that your presence in this world is a gift.
Yes. Well, I appreciate you. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing in this world. We need it. Thank you for answering the call. Thank you for surrendering to the call, because I know that's not easy. But when we surrender, everything is given to us plus more. So thank you so much. This is important work, and it's I think eventually, like you said, we'll see a planet that no longer need our coaching and our healing.
I hope so.
Yeah. All right, guys. So just make sure you reach out to her if you have any questions, if you need some sessions. This is an important energy to clear. It's paramount, actually. It's so important because it will block so much of your prosperity, your abundance, your love, your creativity, anything you want to create. So reach out. You're never alone on this journey. You have so many people here that can help you get from point A to point B. Sometimes that's all you just need to get from the next step to the next. So there's light, there's love here. So make sure you reach out to her. And we will catch you guys at the next episode. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Much love.